Welcome back to As Art with Nick and John. Today we're going to break down some visual effects shots in The Witcher. Ooh, let's jump into it. You ready, Johnny?
Ooh, I'm ready.
All
I'm
right,
ready.
so the first one, we're going to go with the opening scene.
So this is episode 1 opening scene, right?
Yes.
One thing I want to say before we even start is
Yes.
framing and scene and atmosphere. Like this, like right here, just as still is something that I really like. I'm a big fan of silhouettes. I really love kind of fog and things like that. And so in visual effects, very often, or in real life, it's mimicking real life, things that are nearest to you as far as like shadows nearest to you are always blacker. And as you go back in space, you get atmospheric haze or things like that, where things start to get desaturated. We don't really have color here, but you can see that the trees in the back are lighter than the trees in the foreground. And you can see the trunk of the trees in the foreground are kind of curving in, which is leading you into the frame instead of leading you outside the frame. And
Beautiful
it's cool
framing.
if you're, yes, and if you're doing photography, you have the rule of thirds, which maybe we can overlay on there, where that deer or that fawn or whatever is right there is right on that lower right third. So
And
as
then
far as from
the monster is going to appear on the other third.
yes. So go ahead and we can either play it forward or we can go and
Boom.
just pull.
See, like the splash happens right there?
Yeah. So we see that coming in that other third. Yeah.
So, what do you think? Green screened this whole sequence, or you think they shot it on location?
Well, this could be, I'm guessing, so since it's a lot of silhouettes, so this is probably sound, I mean, to get it looking exactly the way they want, either they did a little bit on set, or I'm sorry, not on set, either on location a little bit for the foreground and then added a matte painting for more trees in the background. But to get it looking exactly the way they want, this could have been just a sound stage. That first shot reminded me a little bit of a shot from the Book of Eli where they did do it on sound stage and they had this like kind of post-apocalyptic forest and things like that. And obviously there's many ways you can go about stuff like this.
This is probably totally on a soundstage now that I'm looking at it. Because I don't think the camera's even... It doesn't really move in 3D space too much. Huh? It just feels like it pans up and down. It feels like camera movement. They're adding camera movement afterwards.
At least the shots we've gotten so far.
Ooh, that's a beautiful shot. I really enjoy going frame by frame.
Yeah, you know what? The one thing about when you're watching in
silhouettes
action,
are
you
strong.
don't get to appreciate the artistry quite as much.
But man, that's an ugly monster though.
Ugly as in ugly, like
Design wise. And I get like monsters are supposed to be ugly, but there's like I think a good balance to good looking bad monsters. I don't know. I don't know.
It didn't bother me too much, but
yeah.
the only thing that bothered me about this scene was at the very beginning when you see him come out of the water and he kind of lingers in the air. You can, it kind of looked a lot like he was attached to a wire.
On a wire. Yeah. 100%.
And
no, he's on a wire there.
I mean, which is fine. It just looked a little bit weird to me. It's like they pulled him up. They didn't want to drop him too fast.
But he's Superman.
And it's a little bit harder to tell when you're not in real time. But yeah, but beautiful, beautiful shots. Like any of these could be just a still image you could print out.
They were really trying to stay on the dark. So I think with visual effects, it's a lot easier to make things look good when they're dark, and you can tell like the darkness is helping out the shot. You know what I mean? Like I feel like,
but it also suits the mood and the scene very well too. So it makes sense.
What do you think? Do you think for the renders of the face of the monsters, do you think they just did a comp? Hold on, where's that shot? There it is. Do you think this was just a comp, or you think they did some 3D water and they just put the monster?
That could be a displacement.
Yeah, that's why it looks like a displacement, huh?
Yeah. So see, guys, a displacement is basically, so say you took your camera or your phone or whatever and you filmed water and you have the ripples in the water, and basically you would take that into a program like After Effects, or if you're doing kind of feature film work in Nuke or something like that, and you basically say, hey, warp this imagery the same way that these pixels are moving, and it takes the contrast of it. So that's a quick way that you can get 3D type results or movement without having to actually render out something like water, which takes a really long time to process.
The weight's pretty good right here on the animation. The weight of the monster,
which of course is something you'd be able to comment on way better than I would be able to.
Like, cause like he's and, like it's up, and then you could tell like the head's holding it with the sword. You know what I mean? Like see the weight in the back. That's nice. That's nice, like timing.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah, and you know what? And it's got to be a real challenge to have a massive, like you think of how often do you see these, how many legs does it have? 8, like a spider, or how many does that have?
1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like we
Six.
have 4 on each side.
Four. So I mean, how often do you see? I mean, thank God there's not gigantic
Shelob.
spiders walking around. Yeah. Aside from Shelob, what other movies or shows can you think of where you really
Harry
see
Potter
that very
has a
often?
giant spider too.
But it's not
Asgard
like
or whatever.
you don't have them very often, right? So that's
No.
probably a very challenging thing to animate.
Yeah. Oh, this is another night shot. This is probably my favorite sequence. So this is episode 3, and this is the. Look at that! Look how beautiful that shot is.
Yeah, so this shot is one of my favorite shots out of these ones that Nick kind of chose to talk about, because I just love the framing. I forgot what's the camera angle called when it's a little bit tilted like that. I should know that. I forgot that, but just very beautiful. Like on that lower third, you have that skeleton.
So
you have a little bit.
That's a total like prop. That's like a makeup. That's totally. What is it called? Gosh, not like a physical.
Well, practical effects.
Practical
it's
effects.
practical. Yeah, which you should absolutely do if you need to. Yeah. So the shots of seeing the hand or the things
Like,
dragging.
This is
and
totally
kind
a
of the
person
rule-
right here.
You think so? I'm a little bit far away from the monitor. I can't tell. That looks like it's probably CG there. That's probably rendered.
I think it's a mix.
Oh yeah, that could be added onto it. Yeah.
I totally think the body is a person, and they're adding. I mean, they probably have some makeup on the face, and they probably have tracking points. They probably tracked it, and they added like the effects and stuff to it to make it look. But that's totally a person. But that's
the
gonna
cool thing
hold up
is that,
over time a lot better than a 3D character walking downstairs.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, if you look at movies that use practical effects when they can versus say a movie like I Am Legend where they made all the zombie type characters all CG rendered, you can really kind of tell. But yeah, I mean, either they did a really good job of the composites there if it is all CG, but you're probably right. It's probably a hybrid. And kind of the general idea is that usually you try something practically, meaning actually building it and doing it first, and then if it really doesn't work, then you add in the CG afterward or to blend it together.
That's all CG right there.
Yeah, I mean, to get that to do that exactly like that, you probably had to, yeah.
That's all CG.
And of course, it's going to be a shot-by-shot basis.
But I feel like that's a mix. Like the close-ups of the face and stuff moving, I feel like it's a mix of practical and visual effects. Like that, I feel like is a mix. Oh no, that can be all 3D. But see, like this is good though. Like when you mix the two, it's like good enough where it could be both. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, because either way you cut it, it's going to be expensive. Whether you're building all these costumes and makeup and lighting and things like that, or you're doing all the CG and rigging and lighting and rendering and all that stuff, it's going to be expensive either way. So it really is going to be a storyboards layout shot by shot. This is the fire one.
oh, the
right?
fire. So this is all.
Yeah. So there's some really cool stuff in here and some different approaches they have here. So get to a shot where you see Yennefer putting the fire out from her hands, like right there. So I thought this was a little bit off to me. So you do get some light flicker on her face, but for how intense that fire is coming out, I thought she would just be completely
she
lit
would
up.
be
Like,
glowing.
there would be no shadows whatsoever cast on her.
That's a
And
lot
that's
of
that
fire.
threw me off a little bit. Yeah, well, I mean, and you think about the entire environment it's illuminating. At least her whole front side would have been completely lit up and illuminated.
Yeah, because like even these guys are lit up, but they could probably be lit up a little bit more. You know what's funny? This reminds me, whenever I see fire, I think of the Balrog, right? Like every time you see him falling, like he's just like a light bulb. Like everything around him is like glowing, and you know what I mean? Like he was. I mean, even Gandalf. He was probably peaking with white. I think like, you know, then he had his shield, but you know what I mean? Because once he puts his shield up, there's like so much light everywhere because it's so bright, you know, what's happening with the stuff. And it feels kind of dark.
Flashing,
Like look how dark that tree is for a fire.
Yeah,
that's about
I feel
to
like
hit.
that would be completely illuminated.
All
And
this, I mean, her face
visually
is
it looks kind of fun because you have contrast, but as far as really,
look how dark. She's very dark. I mean, look at all that fire too.
This is one of my favorite shots. I mean, that must have been such a complex shot to render to get all of that volume and all of that simulation done and cached and rendered. That must have taken forever, but that's a beautiful shot. But like you said, probably near the core of that, where the source is, that probably should have been a little bit brighter. Do you think, or no? Or do you think that one looked pretty fitting?
I think.
Now let's throw out the disclaimer. Nick and I have never seen a gigantic magical forest-induced fire before, so we don't know what it actually would look like. But for the intensity of the light, you would think it would be more.
Right now I'm looking at her, right? Because she's surrounded by fire.
Yeah.
and they do get rid of it a little bit, but you can tell when they shot this, they probably didn't realize how much fire was gonna. You know what I mean? Like I feel like they
Mm-hmm.
put the fire, and then they're probably like, think about it too. Netflix also puts all their episodes out at once, so there's not like a let's go back and fix it kind of thing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they have an extra 6 weeks because the movie. You know what I mean? Like because the way the episodes are released, so it might have been one of those
Yeah.
things like maybe we can upload it later and fix it, or who knows? Like what they. But then again, like to the untrained eye, no one would even think this.
Well, I mean, honestly, when I was just watching it, I mean, it's easy to pick something apart when you're going frame by frame. If we were just watching it, there's certain shots that bothered you when we were watching it. There's certain shots that maybe bothered me for a little bit. Overall, did it keep you entertained? And yeah, it did. Like I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool looking. Some of I think the only shots that bothered me out of that when I was actually watching it real time was the shots of the fire coming off her hands, because I just felt like it looked a little bit odd and off, but I it's not like I was pausing and really trying to break it down frame by frame. Now I know this particular shot you had a lot, or series of shots you had a lot of issues with. Yeah.
I don't know if I don't have issues with like the compositing stuff. I think I just have issues with the design of the dragon. It feels more like a chicken, doesn't it? Like I just think like dragons should be huge. Well, I don't know if I'm a fan of the superhero pose, but dragon style.
The power pose for the dragon.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Look, he's like, but then again, it's a dragon. But I feel like that dragon, I feel like his knee would have hit the ground if he really weighs that much. I don't know. Like, I just feel like the weight's off. And he's just so flimsy. I don't know. I think it's more character design. Like, the lighting, he feels like he fits in the scene fine. You know what I mean? Like, compositing wise and all that.
Yeah.
I just think the design of the dragon feels so flimsy, especially for like a golden dragon. You would think they would be like even heavier, right? I don't know. I don't know if it's just a spray paint job or something like that. But and then I know we talked about this in another video, but like when the dragon talks, he doesn't move his mouth. he talks.
Yeah, and so that could have been a creative decision on their part, or that could have been like, hey, let's cut back on visual effects so we don't have to try and rig this dragon's mouth for the short amount of time it's actually in the episode. Either way, it works fine. But yeah, it makes you wonder, did they do that purposefully or did they do that for budgetary concerns? Now, I will say in the universe, at least in the games, there are certain dragons that look kind of chicken-like and they kind of look not as much like dragons. So based on the novels that are going on, I don't know what the description is for the dragon. Well, if maybe it's kind of like episodes.
Maybe it's kind of like the lore, right? Like, you know how he sings songs about the Witcher and he over exaggerates. Maybe dragons were over exaggerated. Maybe they were just chickens with wings. You know what I mean? without fur. I mean, chickens are probably pretty skinny if you take off all the feathers and stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know. I've never skinned a chicken.
Yeah.
But or a bird, or you know what I mean? Like I feel like feathers. You know, I don't know. I think of Smog, Game of Thrones. I hate to jump back to Game of Thrones and Smog all the time for dragons.
No,
but
that's fine. I mean, it's a fair comparison. So, I mean, if you think about this, they were saying how rare a golden dragon is. So you would have thought it'd been this grandiose, huge type of thing. Yeah. But maybe that's just not what they were going for here. Now, I will say one of the coolest dragons I've ever seen is in the second Witcher game. They do have a golden dragon. It looks so cool. Like I thought it looked way better than the Hobbit. It looked way better than any other dragon I've seen.
Was it big? Like, did it look different than this dragon? So this is like
it was way bigger. Yeah, I mean it was like storming the castle type big. Yeah.
All right. Oh, I think I have one more. So let's talk about this shot, John. So
this
what does
is
this remind you of? Does this remind you
of
any movie in the past 20 years, John?
This reminds me of every fantasy movie in the last 20 years that has a battle scene where, in fact, when I was working at Rhythm and Hughes, my comp lead, he had worked on Chronicles of Narnia, and he worked on, Matrix films, worked on a lot of stuff. He said one day, like kind of passively, not to me directly, he goes, dear God, if I have to work on one more movie where there's two armies charging each other. And I'm sure since then he's probably had to work on a bunch of them. That makes me laugh so hard when I think about that.
So what do you think? Houdini or something like that? Some kind of crowd simulator program?
Well, if they're using, what's typically used for huge crowds, it would be Massive, which is what was the program that was written for Lord of the Rings. But there is a lot of other ones out there now, like Houdini can obviously do that. There also is other plugins that can do it as well. So it could have been a number of things, yeah.
You know what's so funny though? Like Lord of the Rings was what, 20 years ago? Mm-hmm. And it's just like, it's so funny. Look, this camera's not even moving. You would think
Well,
they would
does
at
it
least-
need to be moving though? Does it
I
need
just
to?
feel like
I mean, no.
a slight movement might add to the tension, don't you think?
Slight
you're-
push in.
It's like
Yeah,
a battle.
yeah.
I think one of the coolest things about the Lord of the Rings charge is you're riding with the riders for like a minute. It feels like before.
Yeah.
And it's like
Mhm.
there's like they're like getting. You know what I mean? Like they're getting more and more pumped, and then you see the orcs
Yeah.
get more and more freaked. You know what I mean? Like I think that was just
And
like
now-
such a good story element too.
And I do want to mention one thing. So we're gonna cut to other shots in a second, but go back to that wide shot.
Oh, I want to talk about. Okay, white shot. Okay.
So note the intensity of the shadows being
Yes.
cast on the ground right here,
Uh-huh.
and then go ahead and go to the shots that you wanted to talk about.
Why are shadows so important, John?
Well, they help ground them in the scene, and then from what Nick was saying, in this shot, there's not really shadows, so it kind
There's
of
nothing.
yeah. So
And
the only
that is
argument
such a
I can
harsh
make-
light right there too. That's such a harsh light.
yeah, it's a very the argument could be made. It's such a quick shot that the audience isn't going to notice, which I didn't notice. Nick noticed
'Cause
when
it
he
just
was
fell
watching. He
off.
said they didn't even cast shadows. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
the
mean,
other
here,
thing I could
we're
say,
let's just play it through really quickly. Like it feels like they're running on nothing, doesn't
well,
it?
it feels like they're floating, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they did go to the effort to put in, like, when the hooves hit the ground, they do have some stuff popping up every now and then,
why
which
wouldn't
are
you
probably
put
2D
shadows?
cards.
Even if it's like a 20% opacity or something. You know what I mean? Like
Now, the only thing I could say, so in some of these closer up shots, it looks a lot more like, the dust is being thrown up and things like that. So that would maybe cause the shadows not to hit as hard. But this is that
But
first
then
shot where you don't
I
see
feel
those
like you
shadows
would-
right
you
there.
would
They haven't
see
really
the
even
dust.
hit yet.
but you would see the dust though. I feel like from horses.
That's
running.
true. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like you have all these people
If it was
running.
blocking the shadows, you would see the dust heavily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think probably what you caught here is they just didn't have time to get
It's a
everything
oopsies.
integrated in there, because they do
It's a
have soft
oopsies.
shadows. They have kind of cast shadows, but they don't. You know what it is? They have some cast shadows, but they don't have contact shadows. So contact shadows is that fine line you get like when a hoof hits. What do you keep doing? The guy with the axe. to
Yeah,
the
I'm
head?
looking at the dude. Let's talk about this. So, like, John, how would you do this effect?
Well, that's a hard effect, because either you would have to do it in, well, that's hard, because so a lot of times when you do an effect like that, you would do it in reverse. So you already have it made contact, and then you would kind of do it backwards. But that means the horse is
So-
in the background, unless there's CG of having to do them backwards. What do you think?
So basically, I think the helmet's like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mhm.
what they do, I mean, it's probably like they probably mess with timing and stuff. But like I think this is all they did, like a little clean plate for the helmet. You know what I mean?
Just for those few frames.
Yeah, just for those few frames, and I think they hid the blood on the face because it just pops in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One frame, and then they probably
I mean,
have
so quick. Yeah.
yeah, because they don't, and then you know what I mean? Like yeah, no, and then you could tell these are just images they splat on for one frame.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I
Like,
mean, you don't need anything else, really.
yeah. Oh no, the dude. I think that's from the Action Pack essentials.
Hey, if they work, they
Hey
work.
man, I've used that so many times.
All right, everyone. So hopefully it was kind of fun to dig through these shots. Do we know exactly how the shots were done? No, but that's kind of the fun of it, is trying to break it down, make educated guesses, and try and talk about the process a little bit. This is obviously a little bit more broad. We're not going into specifics. So give us feedback on what you want. Do you want us to go more in depth on just a shot or two? Do you like us going through entire sequences? Maybe would you even want to see some low level kind of examples that we do rough together comps on? So let us know. Either way, if you want any content, whether it's video or audio based, head to asart.space, and we will see you on the next As Art.